5-year-old boy had a sudden idea. He tied a steel pipe and a piece of wood together, carved a sightline onto it, then expertly poured in gunpowder and loaded steel balls. He even used 3 matches as makeshift front sights, pulled the string, and fired. Just like that, the world's first AK-47 was born, and that boy was none other than Mikhail Kalashnikov, who would later be known as the father of the AK. Yet his remarkable talent almost went buried by his family's poverty. To make a living, he became a railway worker at an early age. It wasn't until war broke out that he resolutely enlisted and became a tank soldier. He thought he had finally found a stage to fulfill his ambitions, but fate's cruelty far exceeded his imagination. On his very first battle, his unit was ambushed by the enemy. After a violent explosion, he became the sole survivor of his entire tank crew, and a severe wound to his left shoulder forced him to leave the front lines. On the way back to the rear, they ran into a German patrol. In that critical moment, the political commissar's new submachine gun jammed. Kalashnikov quickly drew his old pistol, shot the enemy dead with 1 round, and averted a deadly crisis. On the return journey, Kalashnikov examined the malfunctioning submachine gun and quickly identified the problem. The drum magazine's design was overly complex. In such freezing weather, the melted snow that seeped in couldn't drain out, and once it froze, it stuck the bullets together, so the fragile spring couldn't deliver enough force to fire. The thought that such a weapon would soon be issued to countless fellow soldiers filled Kalashnikov with deep concern, and on the train heading to a rear hospital, that feeling of heaviness only grew stronger. The carriage was packed with soldiers wounded due to weapon failures. This made him profoundly understand just how much a reliable firearm could impact the battlefield. When Kalashnikov showed the sketches of his gun designs in his notebook, he received strong encouragement from a veteran.
Товарищ старший сержант, изобретайте на здоровье. Нашей родине твои изобретения сейчас очень даже нужны.
The veteran's words struck a chord with him, and a bold idea took root in his mind. He wanted to build a gun that would be absolutely reliable in any harsh environment. Soon after, he hurriedly found the old factory director, hoping to use his workshop to build a firearm, while also sharing his unique analysis of the war situation. But his proposal was flatly rejected on the spot. The director already held a grudge against him, precisely because Kalashnikov had previously been secretly designing unusual things in the workshop, which nearly cost the director his job. So no matter what Kalashnikov said, the resentful director wouldn't budge, and even told him to get out. Cold reality hit him like a bucket of ice water. With no money and no connections, achieving his dream seemed like pure fantasy. Just when Kalashnikov was at a loss, he suddenly heard that an important military figure would be passing through the area. Kalashnikov saw hope once again. If he could gain the support of this senior officer, things might take a turn. So he recklessly charged forward to introduce himself. But he didn't just talk about his design. Instead, he used his own combat experience to deeply analyze the strengths and weaknesses of both enemy and friendly firearms. Though the lieutenant colonel was skeptical, Kalashnikov's unwavering devotion to serving his country, even while severely wounded, deeply moved him. The lieutenant colonel gave Kalashnikov a valuable letter of recommendation. Even though the factory director was unwilling, he had no choice but to assign him a workbench, but offered no support in terms of personnel or funds. Faced with this obstruction, Kalashnikov didn't let it bother him. He threw himself wholeheartedly into the rugged road of gunmaking. But even though he had drawn up the blueprints, the machining posed a major challenge. With only one functioning arm, he simply couldn't do it alone. Just when he felt utterly helpless, the workshop workers heard about his story and voluntarily came forward to offer their help. Their loved ones and friends were also fighting on the front lines, so they, too, hoped those soldiers would have reliable weapons. During working hours, the director was in charge, but after hours, they could make their own decisions. This was a microcosm of an era. In the hardest of times, the strength of ordinary people was enough to move mountains. Using their spare time, the workers split up the machining of parts. After repeated corrections and refinements, working day and night, all the components were finally completed. And it was in this crude environment that the world-shaking first-generation prototype of the AK-47 was born. Kalashnikov excitedly prepared to test-fire the prototype, with countless workers following close behind. With a mix of excitement and anxiety, Kalashnikov handed the gun to a fellow worker. Pull the charging handle, chamber around, aim, fire. Then switch to full auto mode. The trajectory remained smooth and stable. But this wasn't yet a complete success. A good gun being able to fire was only the most basic requirement. The true test lay in the bullets it fired. Everyone present held their breath when they saw that the bullets had deformed to an almost identical degree after hitting the target. Kalashnikov knew he had succeeded, because that meant each bullet's muzzle velocity and flight path were perfectly uniform, and the gun's performance was stable and reliable. Somewhat intoxicated by his success, Kalashnikov boldly took the gun straight to the headquarters to show it to the lieutenant colonel, only to be arrested by guards as a suspicious person. No matter how much he tried to explain, the guards wouldn't believe him. How could a tank soldier be a firearms designer? They mocked him mercilessly. Fortunately, word of this quickly reached a major, who recognized at a glance that the gun was no ordinary piece. It bore no factory serial number, yet was full of unique handcrafted details. He took the gun to the range for testing. After emptying one magazine, the major's look of contempt turned to shock. The weapon's accuracy and stability far exceeded his expectations. He immediately returned to headquarters and got Kalashnikov released, telling him that the design was very promising, but if he wanted it to go from blueprint to battlefield, he would have to win the all Union Firearms Design Competition. The major was willing to introduce him to the commander of the Central Asian Military District, General Kurbakin. With the general's approval, Kalashnikov would be able to secure his entry ticket to the competition. But this general was known for his hot temper and sharp eye. When he laid eyes on Kalashnikov, he frowned immediately. He simply couldn't connect this shabbily dressed man before him with a genius designer. He could only hope that the gun would deliver a surprise. After a burst of automatic fire, the smooth rate of fire and stable trajectory made surprise flash across the general's eyes. He quickly switched to semi-automatic single shots. The muzzle barely jumped at all. At that moment, the general's expression completely changed. He immediately grabbed his binoculars to inspect the target. But after getting a clear look, his face suddenly turned grim. Without a word, he turned and walked away. The atmosphere instantly dropped to freezing. Everyone thought the whole thing had been a complete disaster. But unexpectedly, the general suddenly called Kalashnikov back.
Скажешь, генерал приказал выдать новое обмундирование. То конструктор, понимаешь, ходишь как...
Так точно.
Всесоюзный конкурс поедешь от нашего военного округа. Письмо тебе дам с личной рекомендацией. Смотри, Калашников, не подведи, я в тебя верю.
The general's approval became the most important turning point in Kalashnikov's destiny. In 1943, Kalashnikov, carrying that weighty letter of recommendation, set out alone on the road to Moscow, the arena of his dreams. The authorities assigned him a private office, which made him think he had already stepped through the doors of success. However, when he saw the list of competition entrants, a cold sweat broke out instantly. He would be competing against legendary Soviet designers, such as Degtyaryov and Sudayev. Even though Kalashnikov was confident in his brainchild, under the strict and ever-changing competition conditions, his prototype, roughly hammered together by his fellow workers, and somewhat crude in appearance, ultimately revealed fatal flaws.
Слушай, кажется, ты трещотку заклинил.
This setback made Kalashnikov see his greatest shortcoming. Though he had exceptional talent and inspiration, he lacked professional engineering knowledge. His previous blueprints had been drawn by feel and intuition, and could hardly count as standard design drafts. Fortunately, the authorities assigned him a professional draftsman. Her job wasn't just to copy his sketches, but to organize his ideas into standard. With a partner by his side, Kalashnikov felt confident about the competition. But when the results were announced the next day, fate still didn't favor him. The outcome of this competition remained disappointing. Filled with guilt, Kalashnikov felt he had let down General Kurbakin's trust and failed the workers who had given him their all. So he made a special trip to see the general to admit his fault. But to his surprise, the general didn't care about his failures. Instead, he warned him that cowardice was the most shameful thing. The harshest urgings often came from the deepest expectations. The general didn't want to see his talent go to waste, so he decided to provide him with resources and another chance. Reinvigorated, Kalashnikov threw himself into his work, studying gun optimization plans day and night. He sought advice from experts in various fields, striving to perfect every single component. Backed by ample resources and vast amounts of firing test data, a newly improved prototype was successfully completed. When it came time for live-fire testing, this machine delivered an impressive performance, excelling in every metric. Soon after, he entered another competition with an improved rifle prototype. Kalashnikov was full of confidence, believing this time he would redeem himself, but fate played another trick on him. According to the competition results, none of the submitted prototypes could be approved for production, because none of them met the technical requirements for combat use. His painstaking new design was once again rejected without mercy. The frustration of repeated setbacks all came crashing down on him at once. Kalashnikov suffered a blow heavier than ever before. In 1945, Germany announced its unconditional surrender. While the whole nation celebrated, Kalashnikov was happy while also feeling worried deep inside. The war had ended, and his painstakingly developed firearms seemed to have become useless.